All right, let's welcome back to Straight Fire, former NFL scout. And I think we've had him on almost every year that we've talked draft. Daniel Kelly, he likes to throw some big time grenades. A lot of people are like, oh, come on. Dan, what is this nonsense? Zach Wilson, not a first rounder. Well, he's proven right about a bunch of guys. So we're bringing him on to talk because this is a really weak, I think it's a weak overall draft, Daniel, specifically at quarterback. What say you?
Yeah, it has its weaknesses at the position. I mean, there's a couple guys I look at that I think are surefire starters in the league. I look at my QB1 in the 2026 NFL draft, Carson Beck. He's a guy that's the most NFL ready guy, I think, with the best NFL head on his shoulders. A guy who's gone through some adversity, bounced back from Georgia, kind of reinvented himself in Miami, came back, didn't just lead the team, but led them all the way to the national championship game. And the big question for me on Beck was, how was he going to respond to his new team? How was he going to bounce back from the injury? I think he answered those questions. Team responded well to him. And that to me is a great predictor as far as NFL success. And the other guy I look at is Drew Allar from my QB2. I have a second round grade on out of Penn State. And I this is a guy that I've looked at these guys in 30, 40 games apiece. I go all the way back 2-3 years of game film. I watch every game on him in each season. And I had a fifth round grade on Allar in 2023, kind of spotty accuracy. I upped it to a first round grade on my board in 2024. Really like what I saw. Of course, bounces back, has kind of an off year with Penn State. Everything kind of fell apart. Coach got fired. He broke his ankle. Didn't have, that it didn't seem like he trusted his receivers on film. Didn't have Tyler Warren, etc. I dropped him down to a second round grade. And really what I was looking at was, what's he going to look like at the combine? What's he going to look like pre-draft throwing the ball? That was the big thing I wanted to see in this combine, in fact. And he came out there and he was just launching it, which was really great for me to see. And so I have a second round grade on him. But I really think that Beck and Allar are the two guys that we can hang our hat on this draft that can come in and become a starter in this league.
Okay, so a lot of people are, where's Mendoza? Now, wait, don't give it away yet. But let's start with Allar. So actually, let's back up a little. So Daniel, it feels like groupthink in quarterbacks begins before the last college football season. So before the season, Carson Beck was a hot name. Drew Allar was a hot name. Then the season happens, right? And Allar, like you said, he got hurt, but I didn't see greatness. Now, you made a great point. They lose Tyler Warren, but you just didn't see greatness, and then he gets hurt. I mean, they were one of the biggest disappointments in college football. Beck is interesting because they did go all the way to the Natty, but you said carried them. Do you think it was more the defense or him? Because I think people are expecting these guys to pop when the hype is there. And I don't remember a big game where Carson Beck played great, or maybe that doesn't matter in your handicap.
Well, I kind of look at the full body of work, and to me, it's Beck had it's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster season at times, like you were talking about for Beck, but then he kind of like settled into it and settled down. I felt, and really the team started. What was really impressive to me is how the team started responding to him, how the team kind of gelled, it kind of formed around him. So it's kind of his overall leadership, I felt, that kind of pulled that whole thing together in Miami and brought them down the stretch, which was really really great for me to see.
Okay, so I'm looking at Beck's big games. I don't know if we're calling Florida a big game. Florida wasn't great. 17 of 30, 56% completions, 0 touchdowns, 160 yards, a pick. I mean, yeah, he's throwing for 340 against South Florida and 320 against Virginia Tech. But what did he do against SMU? Terrible. Louisville, awful, 4 picks. But again, how much do the stats matter versus, hey, can he make chicken salad out of chicken shit when the pocket's collapsing? Does he have the arm, the quick awareness, the Brock Purdy processing? That's the stuff that gets really muddied with some of these quarterback projections, right?
It does. I mean, there's such a big difference between college football and the NFL. I mean, everything's different. Even the size of the football is different. I mean, the coverages are a lot looser. It's a lot of off man, a lot of zone. It's a lot different. So to your point, what I look at is I put on my NFL colored glasses, I called it, looking at these guys from an NFL perspective. And I'm looking for things like, how fast does he get rid of the ball of his hands? Carson Beck has the fastest time to throw of any quarterback in this draft class per PFF, 2.40 seconds. So he's making quick decisions. He's making accurate decisions. I mean, Carson Beck's a guy that has 72.4% completion percentage. So to me, ideally in the NFL, it's about getting a quarterback and get all the ball, get the ball in his hand quickly and make accurate decisions. Progressions is another thing. I'm watching film. I'm watching their head turn around. Are they looking around? Are they going through their reads? Are they doing that? And to me, Carson Beck is the most pro-ready quarterback from a coverage read standpoint. I saw him regularly make 2, 3, 4, 5 reads standing back there in the pocket. He can dissect coverages. And the thing I love most about Carson Beck over the last few seasons, I mean, I've looked at all 43 of his starts and studied all of them. And the thing I like is how he's able to manipulate and move defenders by his body positioning and also by his eyes. He's able to move people around, kind of like we saw C.J. Stroud do at Ohio State. So I really like those things about him. And like you said, it's like, this going from college to the NFL, it's like, he's a guy, Beck's a guy that can, he looks so comfy to me in a clean or a dirty pocket. He's downfield focused. He can slide around. He can throw the ball from different arm angles. He's able to do things, that translate very well to the NFL from his college tape. So yeah, the stats do play a role. Every piece of information is a piece to the puzzle, but overall, I'm looking at what kind of traits best translate from college to the NFL.
Yeah, traits matter so much more. So let me ask you this. So he was amazing at Georgia. They did not win the Natty, but he had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. They go to the pros. His numbers fall off a cliff. He leads the country in interceptions, I believe. And then he has to transfer because he can't go NFL after that. So he goes to Miami, puts up really good numbers. They lose in the national championship. Do you think the stench of his final year at Georgia is hurting him? Because I haven't heard anybody mention him as a first-round prospect. Nobody.
No, it's interesting because I had a first round grade on his 2023 film, loved him. 2024, things kind of fell off a little bit like you're talking about. I actually moved him down on my board to a second round value, after his 2024 film. And the big thing for me was it felt like there was this this cloud, this distraction, like he was very distracted. That's what kept going through my mind watching his 2024 film. Maybe there was some stuff on social media. Maybe he's getting caught up in some stuff. Maybe there's somebody, his head just didn't seem like it was in the game. So to me, it's like, I very much look at the full body of work, and the 2024 film definitely concerned me. That's why I was so eager to see how he was going to do at Miami, because I was like, okay, because everybody always says, who can't win at Georgia, right? I mean, Stetson Bennett went at Georgia. I mean, 2 national championships. Everyone's like, hey, the great offensive line, everybody's going to turn pro. But I was interested to see how's he going to do now going from Georgia to Miami. And not only that, but coming back from the catastrophic arm injury he suffered in the SEC championship against Texas. So he's rehabbing the arm. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of doubters. There's a lot of criticism. People are not really talking about him much. He has to kind of go through the pain in that rehab. He comes back to Miami. He's got to kind of introduce himself to a new team and a new city. And of course, it's everything that comes along with that. And I was like, okay, let's see how Carson Beck has matured through this process. And to me, there was some real, there's still some, sometimes I think he lets his personal life get in the way too much. And the commentators talked about that during some of the games during the season, where he was kind of leaning on his mom for some advice and some different things. But I think he was actually able to, overcome that and go down the stretch. And to me, it's like, I think there's signs of maturation in that area. So to your point, it's definitely something that's part of the puzzle, but I think he's grown from that experience at Georgia and gone through the adversity of that injury and come up better for it on the other side.
Yeah. Now, Allar looks like he started 2.5 seasons. Oh no, well, maybe 3 when it comes all total. And Beck is 3 full seasons. So then we get to Fernando Mendoza, and he's not your third. He's not your fourth quarterback. Why don't you tell everybody where you have Fernando Mendoza?
He's my QB7.
And why is that?
Well, Fernando Mendoza, to me, is just so incredibly limited from an NFL perspective. Going back a few minutes ago when I talked about, putting on the NFL color glasses and watching him from an NFL perspective. And I'm not trying to take anything away from what Fernando Mendoza has accomplished in college or at Indiana, or winning the Heisman or winning the national championship game. All those things need to be recognized. But it's a different thing, like we talked about, going from, college football to me to to the NFL. We've seen so many of these guys try to make this jump, and it just hasn't worked out. When I look at Mendoza and study him on film, and I study every rep, basically, I see a guy who's very stiff, a guy who's very mechanical, systematic, a linear thinking 6'5" awkward athlete who basically just stood there. He was covered up in camouflage. I mean, it really helps to have a great football team around you, right? The number one team in the country, Indiana. He just stood there in the pocket, basically clapping for the snap and either handing the ball off to the number 13 ranked rushing attack in the country, or he stood there glued to his spot in the pocket like a statue and threw an elementary route tree that offered him the absolute most throwing leverage of any of the passes. A lot of passes to the outside, screens, tunnel screens, outside the numbers, back shoulder down the sideline when he can use the sideline as a friend, throw it deep, get behind the defense. Throws where defenses really couldn't challenge him. He avoided throwing into crowds like the plague. He avoided throwing inside the numbers like the plague a lot of times. And so that's what his game kind of was, to create and protect his completion percentage. And here's the thing. I don't feel from studying the tape that I don't think he really has any feel for front or backside pressure whatsoever. I think that was the whole thing. They tried to camouflage Indiana when he was sitting in the pocket. He would throw the ball so quickly and get out of his hands. Because when I watch, when his first or second read, I mean predetermined progressions, I believe, weren't there for him, he starts to panic. He starts to visibly panic and kind of move around and kind of jump around. And he does 3-4 different things. He either moves out a little bit and tries to find a wide open receiver. He throws the ball out of bounds. He gets sacked, or he takes off running. He ran the ball 90 times this season. So I think that's something they tried to kind of limit from being exposed. But I don't feel like he can feel front or backside pressure. And I don't feel that Fernando Mendoza can read coverage post snap. That's a big one, because I think everything he's doing there at Indiana, I feel like he's basically, it's predetermined. He knows where he's going with the ball before the ball snaps. It was very obvious to me, like he tried to play it off like he was making two reads, but the first read, he really wasn't really looking at it that much. He kind of looked it off real quick and went right to his second guy. So, when I hear people out there, trying to push and pedal, respectively, Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders, it blows my mind as an evaluator, because this is a Raiders team that's given up the second most sacks in the National Football League over the last 2 years, 114 sacks, per StatMuse, and 64 snaps, actually leading the NFL in sacks last year. And you're going to take a guy like Mendoza, obviously the analytics and metrics are a piece of this puzzle too. But I mean, looking at Pro Football Focus, PFF, right? Pro Football Focus, it has him ranked number 262nd in the country in terms of time to throw under pressure. His time to throw under pressure number is 3.65 seconds. That is an eternity in the National Football League. We think Caleb Williams is slow throwing the ball. Caleb Williams looks like he's lightning fast compared to 3.65 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. And also, PFF talked about his completion percentage dropping all the way down to 51.2% under pressure. ESPN stated that Fernando Mendoza's completion percentage under pressure drops to 53.2%. So when he's forced to move off his spot, and the scariest, most frightening, most terrifying part of this evaluation to me is that this is against college competition, right? College level competition. The differences we talked about between the NFL and college football are profound. And the NFL is a lot faster game. It's a lot more complex game. A lot of these guys that he's thrown against and having these low completion percentages when he's under pressure or moved off his spot, they'll never sniff an NFL locker room. Now we're going to ratchet this thing up, right? Now we're going to put him in the NFL and the worst team, supposedly, with a team that's given up all these sacks. To me, is an absolute guaranteed recipe for disaster. And I'll say this as plainly as I can. I mean, I have a 4th round value right now in Mendoza in terms of what his college to NFL translation in terms of his game film. But I'll say it. I mean, if any team dares to draft Fernando Mendoza in the first 3 rounds, not the first round, but the first 3 rounds, this guy is an absolute guaranteed bust.
Wow. That's the harshest critique I've heard of Mendoza throughout this process. So is your guess, Daniel, and again, you spent time in the NFL as a scout. Is your guess that the Raiders will take him or pass?
No pass.
That's interesting because I've heard, I mean, I've heard zero. The odds of Mendoza going first are astronomical. It's like minus 2,000 or whatever. And I'm not even, most of these mock drafts don't have another quarterback in the first. Some people have Ty Simpson. Nobody has Beck or Allar. So you're saying the Raiders, who don't have a quarterback, may pass on Mendoza and draft someone else later? Is that your guess?
That, or I like the odds of Mac Jones. I find that to be a very interesting connection because Tom Brady's connected. They share Bill Belichick as that common denominator. If they could get, trade for him from the 49ers. Another name to look for is Spencer Rattler because Clint Kubiak, of course, was the offensive coordinator when Rattler was drafted down in New Orleans. I think they're going to go a different direction. I just don't see. I mean, I was in the building with Bill Belichick when he was a defensive coordinator. I mean, my mentor is spent won Super Bowl rings with the Patriots. He was there when Tom Brady was drafted, and he called me and talked to me about what it was like when Brady was a rookie and all this kind of stuff. Just knowing what I know of Tom Brady, if he's as involved as people say he may be, I don't realistically see any way possible Tom Brady can look at Fernando Mendoza and say, yeah, that's a good translation. What I'm watching on film here is going to translate well to the NFL. I'd be shocked. It's just like last year, everybody tried to pass off this thing where, Tom Brady, he trained Shedeur Sanders and, watch for the Raiders to take Shedeur. I mean, I was totally against. I mean, I had an undraftable free agent grade on Shedeur Sanders, and I never saw it. I couldn't even imagine the Raiders drafting Shedeur Sanders last year with his limitations he showed on film at Colorado. So I would be just really surprised if the Raiders took Mendoza at one.
So now, certainly, there's people listening, Daniel, who are like, "Oh, this guy's just trolling." Come on, J Mac. He's just saying this to get attention. We know there's 50,000 mock drafts online. Nobody has Mendoza's fourth round. He's just trying to cut through. And you don't have to respond, but I'm just curious. If somebody were to say that to you, what's your response?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody says the same thing. If you've seen one mock draft, you've seen them all,
Yeah.
basically, for the most part out there. I mean, everybody, it's Simon Says, it's singing with the choir. I mean, and that's why when I put my evaluations up, I mean, I'm not just doing this for hot takes. I mean, if you go, look at these reports on my site and stuff, I mean, I'm offering, I have the only draft publication online in America that not only lists all the games I've watched and studied, but also I provide the links. That's the kind of level. I mean, I provide the most grading transparency and accountability in the country. I also offer, all the evidence behind the things I talk about. I tie in analytics and numbers to, like the things I've shared about Mendoza along the way to substantiate this and point this out. And so I'm basically, I play with my cards face up. So I'm not doing this for attention. I'm not doing this for a hot take. Actually, what I'm doing this for too is part of the reason is to try to give these guys their very best chance to succeed in the NFL. I know people say, "Oh, it's hating." He's just a hater. Actually, it's not hating. I care more about these prospects than I can even articulate, because to me, the worst possible thing that can happen to these prospects is to overhype them, overvalue them, overdraft them, set the expectations and the bar so high they can never possibly reach it. I keep hearing these comps. I mean, look at the comps they're throwing out with Mendoza, Joe Burrow and Cam Ward
Jared
and
Goff. Yeah.
Jared Goff, all these different people. I mean, he hasn't even taken a snap. This is a guy who took 3% of his snaps under center. He's been in shotgun his whole career. He doesn't even know what he's doing yet. He's never even seen an NFL defense.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Now, Jared Goff, if memory serves at Cal, I think the number was 0. That's how many snaps he took under center. I know he struggled out of the gate, but that he ended up being a really, really good player. I think he got to a Super Bowl with the Rams.
Right.
That's he's. I mean, he's not no MVP, but he's going to probably end his career with some astronomical numbers. Not quite Phillip Rivers numbers, but like I don't know that I would call Jared Goff a bust.
No, not at all. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. I'm just throwing out that 3% under center is one piece of the puzzle. But to respond to all the people that say this is just so much different, well, yeah, I watch every snap. So I don't know who else there's watching that many snaps. So my perspective, of course, is going to be different than what everybody else's is based on the evidence I'm presenting.
So you have Clemson's Cade Klubnik as a third round value grade. Was he the one or was it Nussmeier? One of them had the small hands that every quarterback's afraid of. I don't remember which it was, but I like Klubnik. He wasn't great this past season. Nussmeier was terrible. But
Yeah.
it seems like you're high on Klubnik.
I am, and it's very surprising to me because I didn't like him at all in his 2023 and 2024 film. I mean, I thought he was terrible as an NFL projection. So I was actually more shocked than probably anybody, that I actually moved him up to a third round grade and put him as my QB3. But the game film changed my mind. I mean, what Klubnik did this past season was that in 2023 and 2024, I compared him to a loose cannon. The passes were all over the place. The ball placement was very inconsistent, below average. But he really, the first couple of games was still the same kind of way. But then he really settled down and he brought his game under control more than I'd ever seen. And the thing about Klubnik is he has a lot of experience. He's been around the game for a while. He's played, quite a bit there at Clemson. And not only that, but he's somebody that's very tough and somebody who's ultra competitive. So I can see a guy like Klubnik coming into an NFL team in a backup role to begin with, and he has a nice preseason because coverages, it's vanilla pass coverage, et cetera, in the preseason. But then as time goes on, I think just his competitive nature and his ability, his experience is going to put him into a backup role. And from there, all bets are off. And I think at some point we're going to see Cade Klubnik as a starter in the National Football League.
Wow, it's a starter. Oh my gosh. Listen, I'll say this, Daniel. You definitely make me think. Hearing some of this stuff is fascinating. I'm just curious. What do you make of the soft skills Mendoza has? The LinkedIn, the interviews, just his story, his genius. I mean, the guy's graduated from 2 business schools already, 2 good ones. The one
Right.
at Cal and Indiana. I mean, his story is fascinating. It almost sounds like maybe you think America's getting wrapped up in the story and missing the little things that matter when it comes to quarterback.
I think they are. And
Mm.
I say that as respectively as I possibly can. I think what we're seeing here is kind of a repeat of what happened with J.J. McCarthy when Michigan won the national championship game. I think people are having just either on a choice or not seeing or whatever the reasoning may be, just have a tough time separating Fernando Mendoza as an NFL prospect from Indiana being the #1 team in the country. And to your point, the things you're talking about, leadership and the LinkedIn and all these things and all these, there's a reason why I have him as a 4th round grade. I don't have him as an undraftable guy. It's not like I just crushed him. And there's still some positives. I mean, he's a tough, competitive guy. He loves the game. He plays hard. He has a strong arm. There's some things there are to me, a 4th round pick is a low ceiling developmental guy that's
Yeah.
worth bringing in. So I feel like there is some things to work with. They're just very limited things to work
Mm.
with when it comes to the NFL game.
So, Daniel, let's wrap up. Why don't you tell the audience some of your biggest hits and misses, just like a few, just so they can provide some context? I think you said last year Shador was undrafted. And remember, at the time, he was being 100% going first round. And he drops to 5th. And, given his rookie year, I know he was a quote unquote Pro Bowler, but I think, yeah, I think you were accurate on that. I remember you nailed Zach Wilson. You
Yes.
tried to give out the warning signs. Now, some of this, I can't give you full credit because it's the Browns and the Jets, two teams that don't know how to do jack squat when it comes to quarterbacks. But give the audience some of your other hits and misses in recent years.
Yeah, 2021, also Trey Lance. I had him ranked as
Yeah.
an undraftable free agent. I never understood that one. 2022, I had a 5th round grade on Kenny Pickett coming out of Pitt. In 2023, I had a 5th round grade and labeled Anthony Richardson pre-draft as a high injury risk and as a bust before the Colts selected him.
Okay.
Also, I had Will Levis that year ranked as a 7th round grade pre-draft. Of course, he
Yeah.
went number 33 overall, 2nd round to the
Is he still in
Titans.
the league? I don't even know.
Well, he is for now. He was hurt last year, so
That's right.
he's
Injured, yeah.
kind of hanging on the Titans roster. 2024, of course, I had Caleb Williams as a 4th round grade, and to me, I mean, my closing words in my scouting report was, he's an elite athlete, but he's nothing really special as a passer, and I think we're seeing that play out. I know people want to fight me and argue me on the Caleb Williams thing, but Caleb Williams' accuracy, the two things I look at there is accuracy efficiency is continuing to decline. He went from 62.5% in 2024, dropped down under Ben Johnson to 58.1% during the regular season this year. Of course, in the playoffs, fell all the way off to 52.2%. And then his time to throw, his process, this has always been a problem for Caleb, but ever since he was USC, his process is so slow. He holds the ball, he runs around, he wants to play hero ball. 2024 PFF 3.03 seconds, 2025 3.23 seconds. So his time to throw got slower too. But that was another one in 2024. JJ McCarthy in 2024 was another one. I had a fifth round grade on JJ McCarthy coming out of Michigan. I never understood that. He was one of the least explosive quarterbacks I've ever evaluated when I looked at his Michigan film. And it's kind of interesting because now they think, maybe he's worth a fifth round pick right now as a trade. That's what I had on him coming out, right? And then of course, 2025, I had a third round grade, pre-draft grade on Jackson Dart. I said in my pre-draft evaluation that he did a below average job protecting his body as a runner. And of course, we all seen the concussions, right? All he wants to do is run into people. And then also we talked about Shedeur Sanders. I had undraftable free agent grade on him in terms of hits.
Yeah. What about the misses?
The misses, the ones that haunt me the most, I think, are a couple quarterbacks. Carson Strong, I had a first round grade on him. Carson Strong, the from Nevada.
Carson Strong. I was like, who? Carson Strong. I remember that guy. Yeah. He went to the Raiders, maybe?
Yeah, well, the thing about him is it haunts me to this day because he had a much worse knee condition than I ever knew about. No excuses. I take full accountability for the grade, but he had a real knee problem coming into the league, and of course that's cost him. Another one I missed on. It looks like at this point, of course, he's playing some. I think he's playing in another league right now. Is Matt Corral? I had Matt Corral as a first round grade, Ole Miss, yeah, and then of course right after the draft comes out the articles and the intel that he was publicly dealing with some demons and some alcohol and some things like that. And so those are probably the two ones, the two that really, haunt me the most in terms of misses.
Yeah, it does feel like quarterback is the toughest position in sports to kind of nail. It's easy to say, well, that guy's not going to be that good, but who's going to be good? Nobody had Brady being great in the 6th round. Nobody. I don't care what anybody said. Nobody had that. Who was the other one? I don't think anybody had Patrick Mahomes being a Hall of Famer going 10th overall. People could say whatever they want. Nobody had him going Hall of Fame. Remember the Josh Rosen? Like, it's really tough, man. When the Cardinals got Kyler Murray, I like Kyler Murray. He was good, and then he wasn't. And now as we're recording this, he just got released by Arizona and put out a statement. I am curious, what do you think the Vikings do in Minnesota with this McCarthy situation? Rodgers, do they go Kyler, Tua, Anthony Richardson? I don't know. A lot of guys' names out there.
Well, what do they do, or what do I want to see them do?
Both.
Well, what I think that what I want to see him do is trade for Spencer Rattler. I mean, Spencer Rattler to me, that was my QB1 in the 2024 NFL draft, and Spencer Rattler I think he's caught right now in a tough situation in New Orleans. He basically put up the top. He was in the top 10 completion percentage this year at 67.7%, which is a noticeable increase for him from the season before. Yeah. Also, he has the 5th fastest time to throw in the NFL per next gen stats. I think Spencer Rattler goes up there. I think Spencer Rattler can actually, during his time in Minnesota, can lead them to their first Super Bowl victory that they've ever had in their first Super Bowl trophy. So I would love to see Rattler up there. I think him and the synergy between him and Kevin O'Connell will be pretty good. Just like I said, prior to the season when Sam Darnold was up there, I said, I put it on Twitter that I picked Minnesota as my NFC surprise team of the year that year when Sam Darnold was up there, because I love the idea of the synergy between Darnold and O'Connell. So I see the same kind of makeup between the coach and the quarterback with Rattler. What do I think they're going to do? Well, it's a league. Obviously, there's a lot of familiarity, relationships. We stick with guys from our coaching trees, that type of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Minnesota bring in somebody like a Jimmy Garoppolo Buffalo from the Rams. So of course, it was, on McVay's team and stuff. He's a veteran that could come in there depending on what they do with McCarthy. But I don't know how far they're going to let Minnesota, let Kevin O'Connell go with this after JJ McCarthy didn't work out. I've been taught in the NFL is once a regime, drafts a guy and it doesn't work out, they give him a shorter leash the next time around, and they're not going to let them go out and make a huge splash until they earn it again. So I think I think what's going to be happening is Minnesota's going to have to bring in, somebody who's not a huge name, and someone Kevin O'Connell is going to have to win with. There's talk out there about these guys, like, because everybody saw the hug and the exchange between Anthony Richardson and Kevin O'Connell. To me, that would be an absolute disaster. I mean, Richardson's, he's barely complete half his passes at any level of organized football, high school, college, or the NFL, and he's made out of glass. I think that'd be a terrible decision. So I mean, but I can see something like that. I know that Kevin O'Connell, at the end of the day, he's basically coaching for his job this year. It
fair
does.
Or not, it feels like it. Yeah,
it does, and he's a really good. I'll say that on the record. He's a really good coach. I really like Kevin O'Connell, but it just feels like that's the situation they're in. So whoever they bring in, I feel is going to be someone he signs off on and is going to give Minnesota the best chance to win. Whether or not they keep McCarthy around long enough to compete for that, I don't know. I don't see any way possible how they could run it back with him. And in the back of my mind, I always think that JJ McCarthy is going to get traded to the Chargers and reunite with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, and he could just be the backup to. Yeah, that's
just be the backup. Yeah, and they get rid of Trey Lance and bring in McCarthy, and he'd be the number 2 behind Justin Herbert.
Interesting. All right, Daniel Kelly, former NFL scout. You can find his website called firstroundmock.com. Is that the best? That's the best one, right?
It is. That's where I do all my work.
All right, man. Listen, you're lobbing grenades. You're going to catch some heat once we post this, but I'm sure you like it. You embrace it. This is what you do. So thanks a lot, Daniel.
Absolutely. It's just about getting these guys a fair valuation. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Enjoy the draft.